Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, chapter 900 of One Piece is out. So if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so, because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. This chapter was jaw-dropping. The arrangement of it all and the cliffhanger was so top tier. This chapter was straight up made for the anime. It gave me a similar impression to a Luffy versus the Enraged Army and how Oda set that up. That chapter felt like a movie, and this chapter feels like an immersive orchestra. Big Mom as the conductor, directing the destruction of the Straw Hat Pirates. I've had some fun watching some reactions to the chapters before I've actually started on my review. And I don't know if you've seen any of these, but that's pretty much my reaction right now. The end of the chapter, just speechless. I'm speechless. Oda, you win this round. I give up. You win this round. I admit defeat. I don't have a good idea. I don't believe anything. I have no expectation to what's going to happen next. Well, maybe just very little expectation. The ambiguity of this chapter is just so perfect for me, because up until this point, specifically with the last several chapters, we always have reason to believe in something. But in this chapter, Oda has left me with the impression that I am legitimately uncertain if everything that we saw is real or not. And I can't find a way to rule out any possibility. One Piece cliffhanger does not get much better than this. But yeah, guys, as far as I can see, there seems to be 2 ways, maybe even 3 ways, in which you could potentially interpret this chapter in context to the chapters which might follow. Firstly, we'll start off with the expectation that it seems as though Oda is trying to sell, which is that the Straw Hats have been defeated. The Thousand Sunny is destroyed. The Fishmen, Pirates, and the Vinsmokes are screwed. And everyone is soon to be captured. I think that we can all agree that they're not dead. Of course they're not dead. The story is not going to end here. So then, ignoring that, it would make the most sense if they were just captured. I know that this is what Oda is intending for us to believe, and honestly, I am often a contrarian, thinking about various ways in which Oda might be deceiving us, but in this case, I buy it. Or buy most of it. I would say that this is probably what I believe, I guess. But at the same time, you can also come to the conclusion that everything that we saw, or a lot of what we saw in this chapter, is not factual. Big Mom is eating the cake. We've seen other people who've eaten the cake. They've been somewhat delirious. You have this scene where Big Mom starts eating the cake, and then you go inside of her mouth for some reason or other. It's almost like a hallucination. And then after that point in time, all the events that we see, like, is this real life, or is this just fantasy? Or even if you don't buy that this is just all in Big Mom's mind, you still see the very end of this chapter, and you think to yourself, what? There is no way that the Thousand Sunny is dead. Oda must be playing us. You may not know in what way Oda will write himself out of this situation, but he must, right? This isn't just a ship. This isn't just a tool these Straw Hats use to travel across the water. The ship is a nakama. The ship is a crewmate. And more than just a crewmate, the ship is also vital for Franky achieving his dreams. His dreams, if you don't remember, is to sail across the sea in the Thousand Sunny, conquer the Grand Line with the Thousand Sunny. Without the Thousand Sunny, Franky's dream automatically fails. But even if you subscribe to this philosophy and you believe this, you believe that no matter what, the Sunny has to come back to life in some way or another, basically can't die in the first place. I believe that it's still a question of how much damage the Sunny can take before that damage becomes irreparable. So outside of the context of what it means for the Sunny to be that destroyed, you're still uncertain, or we would still be uncertain, as to whether the Straw Hats can even escape now. But at the same time, if you rationalize that this could not have taken place, and in some way or another, whether it be a hallucination or illusion, or a mirage, or whatever it might be, the Straw Hat ship is actually fine, then it's also still possible for these Straw Hats to leave Whole Cake Island, because the Vinsmokes are still fighting. They've just been momentarily stopped. Oda clearly hasn't finished with the Vinsmokes because we've got setup of Judge versus Snack still. The fishermen pirates the sea boiled, but they could always escape back into the sea, and the strat could continue on its merry way, and this arc could be over. But I think that the reason why this chapter is so fantastic is nobody is really sure what will happen next. But I guess that a lot of you might have clicked on this video to hear my opinion, so I'm just gonna state what it is that I think, and I want you guys to keep in mind that I am not particularly confident this week. Number 1, I do not think that the Sunny can die. I am a part of the group that subscribes to that. Frankie's dream does not end here. Obviously, I also believe that these strats will not die, but I personally am of the opinion that this is not a hallucination, this is not a mirage, this is not an illusion, this is real. The Sunny literally took a giant blow and might in fact be sinking. As long as the Sunny can be retrieved and repaired, this is what I got from this chapter. This is what I believe. I personally believe that these strats are now stuck in Whole Cake Island with no way to leave, and the weight of the potential death of a crewmate on their minds. I personally think that this would be the absolute best way that Oda could take this while maintaining with what I hold true. But as I said, guys, I don't believe that Big Mom is hallucinating what we saw occur to the Sunny and what is occurring on Cacao Island. But that doesn't mean that I don't think Big Mom is tripping balls, because I think that right now she is out of her mind with ecstasy. And assuming that these strats are stuck, it becomes very curious as to what Big Mom does next. And so I want to ask this question, guys, and this is kind of an abstract question that may or may not have any relevance, but personally it's a question that weighs on my mind, which is that what will happen to Big Mom once she finishes the wedding cake? On one hand, it can be relatively straightforward and not particularly interesting, which is she finishes the wedding cake, she's done, she's happy, she then heads to Cacao Island, or she gets status update as to what has been occurring this entire time, because we're led to believe that she doesn't retain memories of her rage state. This leads Big Mom back to Cacao Island, where maybe the strats are defeated and captured, and you need some craziness from Pudding, essentially, in order to save them. But on the other hand, once Big Mom finishes the cake, what could happen could be very, very not straightforward. And so what I actually mean by this is not something that I'm going to be talking about in this first reaction. I'm going to make a theory video specifically about it. Hopefully, shortly after this video goes live, I'll start working on it. I really think that this would be something that you will be looking forward to, because the idea, whether or not I believe it, I'm not sure, is definitely shocking. But on the other hand, if you're looking for something that could occur after she finishes the cake, is Big Mom could pass out, like we were led to believe that she would do originally. I personally wouldn't bet on it, but it's definitely a possibility. But hearing a lot of people talk about this chapter, a lot of people believe that the cake was a failure and therefore Sanji was a failure. But I honestly cannot agree with this. A lot of people were caught up in the expectation that, granted Oda created, that was misleading, that Big Mom would pass out once eating the cake. And then, like I said earlier, it's possible that she does that, but it's also possible it doesn't. And that does not make the cake a failure, because that's never what Sanji intended to do. We saw it in the flashback in this chapter, and honestly it could be gathered from previous chapters. Sanji wanted to create a cake that was so delicious Big Mom could die, not that she would actually die or pass out. The cake was simply intended to be the most delicious thing ever, and Sanji succeeded. The reason why Sanji created this cake in the first place was to stop Big Mom's rage, and the cake seemingly also succeeded. I see a lot of people out there blaming Sanji for what has potentially occurred to the strats in this chapter, and I want to make it clear, guys, that we're going to be arguing from the perspective that the strats are essentially defeated now. I understand that it is ambiguous, but it is impossible to discuss every facet of this chapter from the many possible conclusions that could come from it. So yeah, assuming that these strats are defeated, it's now Sanji's fault that they are defeated because the cake didn't do what it was supposed to do. Defeat Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates. Or at the very least, save them from defeat. Basically, the point of the cake for a lot of people, it doesn't seem to have a point anymore. Because they're now defeated and Big Mom is awake, potentially going to kill them again. It's like, shit, we're back where we were earlier in the arc, and it seemed like making the cake was a complete waste of time. Or even worse, it potentially screwed them. And so I want to make this clear. If it is true that the Strats were defeated in this chapter, then it is not Sanji's fault. It has everything to do with the power of the Yonko, the power of Big Mom. Defeat was unavoidable. They were just stalling. Let's take Sanji making the cake completely out of the story, and what changes? Well, Luffy probably still fights Katakuri in the Mirror World because he needed to take Katakuri away from the Sunny in order to save everyone. Therefore, the Strats probably meet up with Luffy again at 1 o'clock in the morning, so the time frame stays the same. The Strats continue to barely avoid and run away from the Big Mom pirates forever. But in this case with Sanji, because he's not making the cake, but it still does not change much. And at the end of the day, they are still defeated. Because the cake did not defeat them. Hell, Big Mom did not defeat them. The Big Mom pirates did. And so people are throwing out the argument that it was told to us that while in her rage state, it was very difficult to control Big Mom's homies. And so from that perspective, then the Big Mom ship, which ultimately destroyed the Sunnies, supposedly, may not have been able to do that had Big Mom not had the cake precisely when she did. Basically, the cake brought her back to her senses and made her homies more controllable once again, and thus you have the Big Mom chanter come in and wipe out the Strats. But even if it hadn't been Big Mom's ship, then had they not been making the cake, it could have been Big Mom herself. It could have been Smoothie, it could have been Snack, it could have been the legions of other Big Mom pirates, which are now successfully defeating everybody in Cocoa Island. Or if the Strats manage to escape, then they're followed by the Big Mom pirates forever. This is what Chiffon told us verbatim. As long as Big Mom suspects that they have the cake, then Big Mom will follow them to the ends of the earth. Accompanied by Smoothie, accompanied by Snack. The Big Mom pirates would eventually win. Or chase them until they are in an impossible situation dealing with both Big Mom and Kaido. And they didn't know that Big Mom was potentially going to die, but even if as Big Mom is chasing them, she starves and dies, that doesn't stop the rest of the Big Mom pirates from finishing their objective. In fact, it gives them more motivation. We are led to believe that Sanji making the cake was the only way that these Strats were going to be able to be successful. Even if Big Mom dies and the Big Mom pirates die out soon afterwards, the Strats still lose, so they both lose. So Sanji is not to blame for this defeat, the strength of a Yonko is. And so with that being said, I don't think that, assuming again that the Strats are defeated, that we should assume that the role of the cake is done in the story and that Oda literally introduced it into the story in order to pass time. There's several important things that we can already conclude from this. First off, Big Mom will never again be able to get out of a rage if she goes into one, because it will require Sanji in order to make it, because Sanji has now created the new standard. And no chef in Totland or anywhere else in the world is going to be able to match his cake. So literally guys, from this point in the story forward, Big Mom will be dependent on Sanji, probably in order to survive. No other cake will live up to her expectations or her imagination. It's also interesting how Big Mom will react when she, I believe, inevitably finds out that Sanji was the one to make the cake and not Pudding. We saw Pudding think to herself, hey, well, you know, you guys are celebrating, but it wasn't me. I think Pudding is probably going to be honest at some point in time. And if Big Mom finds out that Sanji made the cake, what Lola said is that Big Mom would forgive them. Now, I do not believe that, but Oda can do very interesting things with this information. Side note here, I just said Lola, but I'm too lazy to edit. I meant Chiffon. Also, I do not think that we should underestimate what Sanji achieved while making the cake, outside of the cake itself, which is that Sanji got to know Pudding, and more importantly, Pudding got to know Sanji. We saw during the tea party how conflicted Pudding was, and has been for the majority of this arc, but after all this time has passed, being around Sanji, her perspective has changed. She's legitimately fallen in love with him. If Sanji doesn't make the cake with her, I don't think that Oda justifies this position. And so it allows for Pudding to start doing things for these Strats that may be against her best interests. This allows Pudding to do something desperate for the Strats. And like we have been speculating for a very long time, Pudding very conveniently has the powers of memory manipulation. Again, assuming that they are defeated and the arc does not end. But I guess the main point is that a lot of people get really impatient for things to have some sort of meaning or some sort of payoff, but sometimes we don't get immediate satisfaction, and that's alright. Oda makes things clear when he wants to, when it's convenient for him and his story. Sanji made the cake. You don't see in what way it helped them right now, I get it. But if the Strides are defeated, then this arc is not over and Oda has more time to do things with it that you may not have anticipated. But yeah guys, aside from this, it's kind of difficult to discuss this chapter just because, like I said earlier, there's many possible ways in which you could go from here, and I can't really do any discussion that much justice. But it does seem like we have a Snack versus Judge fight, which is incredibly hype. We see a new Big Mom character fighting, it appears, the Vinsmoke brothers. I checked and I do not see him. I have not seen him anywhere in all of Whole Cake Island, and he looks strong. I'm really curious who this is and how powerful they are. The fact that Peckham's is still absent is still extremely curious to me. Stussy, Morgans, and the rest of the Underworld Emperors are all just gone. Oven definitely redeemed himself by boiling the sea. Also, this chapter reminded me just how much I want, I don't know if this will happen, but how much I want Katakuri to make an appearance in order to confirm that Luffy defeated him. And hopefully get them to stop disrespecting Luffy and assuming that he defeated Katakuri in any other way than legitimately. And as with everyone else, I am waited with bated breath for the next chapter, which will unfortunately come after a break. And I want to remind you guys again that I have a speculation that I'm going to be working on just as soon as this is uploaded, that I think is going to be shocking. Really cool. And as with every other possibility, is going to open the floodgates of new and different discussion about what could possibly happen next if you assume that it is true. But yeah guys, absolutely loved this chapter. I would say maybe the best chapter of Whole Cake Island, maybe second to Katakuri stabbing himself because I love that moment, but it's definitely up there. This was such a fantastic chapter, one of the best cliffhangers in Whole Cake Island. But as always, I'm curious as to what you have to say about this, whether you noticed anything from this chapter that I may have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.